frost is thick on the outer stonework tonight. If you look closely at the edges of the circular glass window, you can see the ice crystals branching out like tiny frozen rivers, trying to crawl their way toward the center of the pane. It feels as though the entire valley has been locked in a deep, silent preservation. The village below is completely dark now. The chimneys have stopped smoking, and the world feels perfectly still, as if it's waiting for something to break the quiet. The background music drifting up the spiral staircase has this beautifully slow, sweeping melody tonight. It doesn't have a rigid time signature. It just rises and falls like a slow tide hitting a forgotten shore. It's the perfect accompaniment for what I found hiding beneath the floorboards this evening. I wasn't even looking for a new map, to be completely honest with you. I was just trying to clear away some old, damp insulation near the eastern joist. My fingers brushed against a heavy, lead-sealed cylinder. Inside that cylinder wasn't parchment, and it wasn't vellum. It was a massive sheet of cured whale hide, thick and heavy, dyed a color so dark it seems to absorb the candle flame entirely. When you look down at it, there are no geometric lines. There are no degrees, no mathematical equations, and none of the modern zodiac symbols we've been tracking over the past few weeks. This artifact predates the Third Dynasty. It predates Orestes, and it predates the very foundation of this watchtower. This is a relic from the First Voyagers, a lineage of primordial navigators who went completely extinct before humanity even learned how to build stone walls. We tend to look at the night sky like a permanent library, a collection of neat, categorized constellations with historical names and predictable paths. But to the First Voyagers, the sky was completely wild. It was an untamed, shifting wilderness. They didn't sail their primitive wooden skiffs by tracking fixed points of light. They didn't have the concept of a northern star or a southern crown. They believed the universe was a living, breathing organism, and that the stars were merely pores on its skin, venting excess heat and spiritual energy into the cold void. Instead of drawing lines from one star to another to create shapes of hunters or beasts, they mapped the empty spaces. They mapped the currents of darkness. If you trace your hand across this hide chart, you can feel these faint, raised ridges carved directly into the surface. Those ridges don't track light. They track the cosmic wind. They track the invisible rivers of heat that flow between the galaxies, the subtle poles of gravity that only a mind entirely stripped of modern logic could ever hope to perceive. They were a strange people. From the few fragments of folklore that survived in the old mountain oral histories, they didn't live in towns, and they didn't harvest crops. They spent their entire lives on long, slender vessels made of bone and treated canvas, floating along the very upper limits of the atmosphere, where the air is thin enough to make your chest ache. They didn't use ink to record their journeys. They used a strange process of chemical scarring, pressing heated silver needles into the hide to create these abstract, swirling whorls that look more like the fingerprints of a giant than a navigational chart. I've been trying to align their ancient silver markings with the view through our modern brass telescope, and it's proved completely impossible. The sky they map simply doesn't exist anymore. The stars have drifted too far, old nebulae have burned out into ash, and new clusters have ignited in regions they marked as absolute voids. It's a dizzying realization. It forces you to confront the fact that even the cosmos is shedding its old skin, leaving its past behind like a snake moving through the grass. The rosemary oil in the lantern is burned away to a dull ember, and the scent of the old cured hide is filling the room. It has this ancient, oceanic aroma, a mix of salt, oil, and incredibly old dust. It's a very heavy smell, the kind that settles deep into your consciousness and makes your thoughts feel sluggish, as if they're trying to wade through deep, cold water. My eyes are having a difficult time staying focused on the silver whorls. The candle flame is reflecting off the metal scars on the map, creating these tiny, dancing reflections that look like ghost lights floating through the attic. The old stories claim the first voyagers didn't view death the way we do. They didn't think a life just ended and went into the ground. They believed that when a navigator's heart finally stopped beating, their personal consciousness was pulled upward, dissolving into the grand currents of the cosmic wind they had spent their lives tracking. They thought that every gust of wind that howls through the masonry gaps of this tower is actually the collective breath of 1,000 dead sailors, still navigating the darkness, still trying to steer the planet through the uncharted territory of space. It's a comforting thought, especially on a night as freezing as this one. It means we aren't actually alone up here in this isolated stone spire. We are just sitting in a room filled with the breath of the people who came before us, listening to their old steering commands as they whistled through the roof tiles. The music down below is shifted into this beautifully faint, repetitive drone, repeating the same cyclical sequence of notes over and over until the individual chords lose their meaning. It sounds like an echo coming from the bottom of a very deep well. It makes the walls of this observatory feel incredibly thin, like they could just dissolve at any moment, leaving us on a wooden platform floating completely unprotected in the middle of that ancient, wild sky the first voyagers mapped out. We spend so much time trying to anchor ourselves. We want names for everything. We want to know exactly what hour it is, what day it is, and where the boundaries of our country lie. We treat the unknown like an enemy that needs to be conquered with a pen and a measuring tape. But the first voyagers didn't have any of those anchors. They managed to navigate the void for thousands of years without ever getting lost. They understood that the only way to truly survive a wilderness is to let go of the shore, to stop fighting the current, and simply allow yourself to become part of the movement. The candle is getting dangerously low now, the wick drowning in a pool of melted wax, making the shadows on the wall stretch and warp in the dimming light. The ancient whale hide chart on the desk is fading into the dark, the silver markings losing their luster until they look like ordinary wrinkles in an old piece of leather. Let it fade. Let the old navigators take the wheel for the rest of the night. You don't need to steer the ship anymore. You don't need to calculate the drift of the stars or worry about the ice crawling across the window glass. The tower is secure. The background music is carrying the silence, and the sky is moving exactly where it needs to go without our permission. Let the names of the constellations drift away. Let the memory of the grid lines dissolve into the darkness of the room. Tell me, if you could completely forget every name, every date, and every boundary line you've ever been taught, do you think you would feel entirely lost in the dark? Or would you finally feel like you've arrived home? Till next time.